If we think of the mind like the ocean, on the surface, we can have very choppy waves, lots of activity. But if we take a nice dive, we transcend the surface busy part of the ocean and experience a whole nother world in there. Beautiful, peaceful world. So that's why it's called Transcendental Meditation. And basically, it is so simple. Anyone who can think a thought can learn this type of meditation. It does not require concentration, focus, contemplation. Trying is prohibited. Simple, natural, effortless.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. I'm Bob Nickman. My guest today is Lynn Kaplan, and we're going to be talking about Transcendental Meditation and her work at the DAVID Lynch Foundation. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can see photos of all my guests, synopses of the episodes, listen to all the episodes, a little bio on myself. And there's a donate button if you'd like to support the show that will give you some access to extra content. I also have a YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and there is a Facebook page. So much appreciation for you guys listening in and checking those things out. As I said before, my guest today is Lynn Kaplan. Lynn has been teaching Transcendental Meditation for a very long time. She actually became interested in high school and has gone on to teach for many, many years, among other endeavors in her life. And she has been working at the DAVID Lynch Foundation, where they are disseminating this Transcendental Meditation to various groups, such as veterans and other organizations that help people to deal with stress and trauma. It's a wonderful thing that they do, and Lynn explains it beautifully. So here she is. This is Lynn Kaplan. Good morning to Lynn Kaplan. Nice to see you.
Good morning to you. Nice to see you on this President's Day.
Yeah, it is. I forgot it was a holiday. And I was talking to my daughter, and she wasn't at work. And I go, "Where are you?" She goes, "It's a holiday, Dad." That's how much I pay attention. I want to first start with the DAVID Lynch Foundation and maybe your mission statement and what you guys are all about, and then we'll get into what you do there specifically.
Thank you so much for asking about it, because I'm really passionate about the work of the DAVID Lynch Foundation. I've been working with them since David started the foundation 15 years ago. So the mission statement is to make the simple, natural technique of transcendental meditation available to vulnerable and underserved communities to help release stress and heal toxic stress that's stored in the body, in the nervous system, and, depletes people from realizing their full potential.
So it's really about healing trauma and giving people an alternative to move through the world in a way that isn't too stressful and detrimental to their health.
Well, TM heals trauma, as well as just dissolving regular stress that people accumulate just as they go through their day. So it's a wonderful, wonderful, powerful tool. But our mission with the DAVID Lynch Foundation is specifically bringing it to veterans, for example, who have symptoms of post-traumatic stress, women and girls who've suffered domestic violence and sexual assault, inner city kids and their families who who are really struggling right now during the pandemic. Speaking of the pandemic, frontline health providers and first responders who now feel like they're working in a war zone. And then people in recovery from substance abuse disorder. All of these populations have one thing in common that most human beings have in common, and that is a buildup of stress.
Where does this take place? Do you do outreach and go to actual facilities and then teach TM, and then people can kind of go from there? How does that work? Let's say I'm a veteran. I'm maybe living on the campus in West LA or in some other type of housing. How would that? Let's use that as an example.
Okay, so for the veterans, sometimes we will partner with a veteran organization and we will go to them, or the veterans can come to the David Lynch Foundation office here in Los Angeles, Central LA. So in that case, it's whatever the program partner wants and what's easiest access for the veterans. Families, inner city families, and families that are struggling, we have a program called Healthy Families, Healthy Communities, and we go to wellness centers and provide that to not just the child, but also parents or guardians. So it's either way, whatever works easiest to make it accessible.
That's what I always say. I'm on the side of what works.
Yes.
Well, fantastic. It's a much needed thing in our society. I believe I've been meditating for a very long time. I have not done transcendental meditation, but it really has more to do with my own, what I would call contempt prior to investigation. It was very sort of popular and trendy back when I was a young person, the Maharishi and all that kind of stuff. That was, tail end hippie kind of stuff. And I remember people saying that they were doing TM, and I go, "Oh, what is that?" And they go, "Well, you're given a mantra and you can't tell anybody." And I went, "No one's telling me what to do. I'm not doing that." I'm not even going to try it because I don't like authority. I don't like to be told what to do and what not to do. So I never explored it. People seem pretty happy about it. And they seem to be doing well, but I guess it was my contempt for the woo-woo kind of stuff, and also being told that I couldn't tell anybody what my word was because I didn't see that as essential to meditation. Now, many years later, I'm going to find out what that means, why that is so. I know no one explained anything to me. I just took a posture at a young age. I was probably 18, 19, 20 when I had this attitude. So I'm a huge fan of meditation, and I do a couple of different types of things and using different music. And I've done breath work. I do a lot of different stuff because I want to explore and find out what works for me. So now I want you to tell me what TM is and how you got started in it.
Okay, so Transcendental Meditation is a very simple, natural, effortless mental technique that allows the mind to transcend. And when we say transcend, that means to go beyond. What are we going beyond? This active, busy, stressy mind to that quiet. We transcend that and experience that quiet, still, peaceful part of our mind. So if we think of the mind like the ocean, on the surface, we can have very choppy waves, lots of activity. But if we take a nice dive, we transcend the surface, busy part of the ocean and experience a whole nother world in there. Beautiful, peaceful world. So that's why it's called Transcendental Meditation. And basically, it is so simple. Anyone who can think a thought can learn this type of meditation. It does not require concentration, focus, contemplation. Trying is prohibited. Simple, natural, effortless.
Is there a posture that you take, or is that wide open too?
So we sit comfortably. So that's very important. That's actually the first instruction with TM, because TM is all about giving the body deep, profound rest. Sit comfortably, ideally with some back support, so that the body isn't working at all, so that the body can go into a deep state of restful alertness. Now, what's so great about rest? Rest is how our bodies heal. Rest triggers the healing response of our body. And so you're actually multitasking with TM. The mind is transcending, going within, expanding consciousness, and at the same time, the body is gaining a very deep, profound level of rest. That deep rest triggers the body to heal, or we could say dissolve stress that's stored in the body. And there's a tremendous amount of research all around that.
I get a lot of people when I talk about meditation, they say, I can't do it because I can't shut my mind off. It is, as much as I have attempted it, the mind is, some people's minds are so busy, we can call it the monkey mind or whatever you want to call it. They are so busy. I don't necessarily have that, but I know a lot of people that do. They're just wound.
Guess what? The mind is a monkey. That's the mind. The mind thinks thoughts. So with transcendental meditation, we don't tell the mind to stop thinking. We let it do its natural thing, but we just transcend. We go beyond that busy thinking level of the mind. So back to the ocean analogy, let's say we go to the ocean and we see it having all these amazing waves, and we decide we want to experience the peaceful part of the ocean. We don't stand there and tell the ocean to stop having waves. We maybe get some scuba gear and learn how to scuba dive, and we just spontaneously transcend that busy part of the ocean and experience that quiet, peaceful part of the ocean. While we're within the ocean, people can be swimming, surfing, playing around on the surface, but our attention is deep within.
And how do you get there? That's really, I guess, what people would ask. They would say,
We use a technique.
That sounds great. Mm-hmm. How do I go underneath the wave?
Just like learning how to scuba dive or snorkel, you have to learn how to use the technique. Once you know how to use that technique, you can transcend the surface of the ocean safely. With transcendental meditation, we have a technique, and it's ancient. That's the beauty of TM. It is ancient. It's 5,000 to 10,000 years old. It comes from the indigenous knowledge of ancient India. So it is tried and true. When a person comes to learn to meditate, they learn the technique from a certified TM teacher.
Which you are, I'm assuming.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you convey some of what that technique is without
Sure.
making yourself vulnerable to lawsuits?
I'm not into lawsuits.
I'm teasing you.
No. So here's the thing. Why do we keep the teaching private?
Yes.
Because it's an ancient indigenous knowledge. And as we know, indigenous knowledge is being lost every generation, sometimes every year. And so the purpose of keeping this knowledge private is so that it's not lost. That's the whole reason. It isn't some business scheme or something like that. It's to preserve the purity and the power of the teaching. Because clearly I'm not Indian. I've been entrusted, and the last thing I want is it to be lost in this generation. So that's the whole point of keeping it private, keeping it pure, so that when you come to learn to meditate, and I'm inviting you if you would like to learn, you will get the benefits. You don't want Lynn's version of TM. So when a person let's say you come in to learn to meditate, I'll sit down with you. It's taught in 5 one-hour classes. The first class is kind of like this. It's an overview. what is TM, what it's not, how does it work. The second class is the private instruction. We do an interview together, and from that information, I'm able to choose the correct sound vibration for your mind that will resonate with your mind to help it settle down. So the Sanskrit word for sound or sounds whose effects are known is mantra. So in ancient India, they had this ancient science of how to use different sounds for different nervous systems as a catalyst to allow the mind to settle down.
This is really synchronous because I've been studying a lot about different types of sound healing.
Yes.
And the different hertz that affect different parts of the body and the biofield and all the, and it's coming back around sort of scientifically now to what you're talking about that has been there, this knowledge that has been around for a long time. And I know that, I experiment with different sound frequencies in my meditation just to see what happens. I'm doing a lot in, I think it's 528 hertz right now. Just to see what that's going to do. It's not the same effect every time that I do something, which is interesting. And it's just same as any kind of meditation. There's things that come up that you don't expect.
Right. So when a person becomes a TM teacher certified, it's 5 to 6 months in residence, fully immersed in this knowledge. And so they're very careful who is entrusted with this knowledge, that the person's stable mentally, physically, emotionally, and can guide any person from age 4 to 104 through this process and support them in this process. So after the personal instruction, then we have 3 consecutive days, 1-hour classes, meeting with the teacher and student, supporting them, guiding them, giving them knowledge based on their experience. So when you learn to meditate in your personal instruction, then you'll go practice it, then you'll come back, meet with your teacher. Based on your experience, the teacher gives knowledge. And so it's such a full, rich knowledge because it's based on experience. It isn't just theoretical.
I had no idea that that's what it was. I when you say you were fully immersed for 5 or 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
So you were living in a place where this was going on, or you were going there every day? How did that work?
Living there. So I did this in 1974. I, left college after my freshman year and went and studied in France. So it was an international course, and we were studying with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Oh, okay. So right from the source there.
Right from the source.
Of that time.
Yes.
You actually left college to go do that. Good for you.
With a blessing from my father.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you were always curious about these types of things.
Yes.
Obviously, from a young age, if you were a freshman in college, you were inquisitive and wanting to know what this whole thing of being alive means at a very young age.
Very young. So I had an awakening when I was in high school, just naturally. I never did any drugs or anything. Something woke up one day, and then I learned TM very soon after that, seeking more knowledge, more truth. And I have to say, Transcendental Meditation has given me those answers that I was seeking when I was about 15 years old.
Can you explain what that moment was? I love this kind of stuff, by the way. When people say they have an awakening or a realization, maybe you can't. Was there like a sadness before that, or confusion, and
there was an emptiness. I had achieved everything they told me would make me fulfilled. So I was the yearbook editor and, all these things that a high school kid would want to be. I was a good student. I had gotten into the college of my choice, and I wasn't fulfilled. And I was literally driving to school one morning And I had a shift in consciousness. In other words, my consciousness expanded. And I had to pull over to the side of the road, and I just felt like a different person. I saw everything in a different light. And then I learned TM. I was very happy, very fulfilled to learn it, because it isn't just the technique, it's all the body of knowledge that goes with it to help a person understand those expanded levels of consciousness, that awakening. Everybody wants that. Everybody. When we teach, sometimes I'll teach students as young as 12 years old, and they know about it. There's some intuition. We all have that feeling that there has to be something more.
Absolutely. I remember a time when I was probably between 8 and 10 years old, laying down in the grass, looking up at the clouds and going up into the clouds and being sort of part of this thing.
Beautiful.
And the vastness and the beauty and the power. And I remember thinking, there's more here than what people are telling me. They're talking about. I better keep this to myself.
Yeah. I didn't have anybody to talk to.
No.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What a beautiful experience. That's it. You had an awakening. That something in you woke up.
Well, there is some studies, I guess, that have been done, and just some knowledge about when children reach around the age of 9, there is a realization that they are separate from their parents and that they can die. And it can be frightening or not frightening, but it is certainly a type of coming of age in awareness that and you can see it if you watch kids that age. They start to become, I've seen it with my kids too. There's an awareness that happens. And if there's nobody or nothing to grab onto to kind of deal with that, you're just floating in this world that doesn't make complete sense, because there's a vacuum and, like you said, an emptiness. You're just like, what the heck? What am I doing?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because Maharishi was a scientist. He had his degree in physics. And so everything that he laid out was based in science. And there's such a huge body of research, published peer-reviewed research, all around the benefits of TM. And that's because Maharishi, who brought this knowledge out of India in the late 1950s to share with the world, but he didn't want it in the woo-woo land. He wanted it grounded and with the foundation of science behind it. So we only teach children at the age of 10. And that goes along with what you're saying. Around the age of 9, they make this transition. And at 10, we can teach them how to transcend.
I wish I had known that before it was co-opted by the woo-woo side of things back in the 70s. I was like, I might have been more interested. Was it not that? And I was kind of a hippie myself, but I didn't like that part of it.
Right.
It always seemed kind of fanciful and a little bit ridiculous and naive to me. But this sounds to me like there's very solid evidence that these things work. And it's been around for forever. And a lot of people just are very happy with the results they've gotten.
When we bring this technique to our different program partners, we always have an element of research with it. Well, as much as possible. So we're getting ready to do a big 2-year national study with veterans through the VA. Veterans who are suffering from post-traumatic stress, as well as some suicidal ideation. And so we bring that together, the science and the program. And it's just beautiful. It's very fulfilling. You can tell I'm really passionate about this work. And I was probably one of the most conservative teenagers you'd ever meet. So it's not far out there. It's far in there. It allows you to take that journey deep within yourself.
I love that. I've done some volunteer work at the VA, so I've had a lot of contact with veterans there. It's one of my favorite places to go. They have a lot of programs going on there, and I've talked to quite a few people there, and I've asked them, what's been the best part of, I was working with they were homeless, that they rehabbed a building there and worked with this place called Step Up on Second, and they rehabbed a building and they brought homeless veterans to live there. And they were talking to me about the fact that someone's listening was the biggest part of it. And that sounds like a little bit of what this is too, because you're connecting with a teacher that's actually listening to your thoughts and what's going on with you in a way that is just for you.
Yes.
To give you some specifics, which is interesting to me. I didn't know there were specifics in terms of the person. That I didn't know. I just thought it was like, say this word, and it was just plucked out of nowhere, and it could be anything.
It's a Sanskrit sound, and it has no meaning. And that's very important, because if it had a meaning, it would engage your intellect and you'd be up here riffing away at it. So it's just the sound vibration that is a vehicle that allows the mind to transcend.
Is part of it observing thoughts and letting them go?
No.
That's not it at all. Okay.
You're transcending, because that's work.
It is.
Yeah. In TM, there's no work. It's effortless.
Well, I'm going to come in for a
You want to come in? Okay.
I do. We'll talk about that after I'm absolutely fascinated. And I like to do the things that I put on my podcast, because then I get to learn more.
I just want to add one other point, and that is, once you have your TM teacher, that person is your TM teacher for life. And so we have a follow-up program. So when somebody graduates from the course, the initial training, we still follow up with them if they want it, about once a month, to refresh the meditation, to offer group meditations now via Zoom. We're always available for that support once we teach somebody.
Of the people that take these courses in TM, how many do you think percentage-wise stay with it? Do you have any kind of statistics? That's probably hard to.
It depends. It depends on if they really sought it out. I would say they often will stay with it. I have to tell you, teaching people who are involved in the 12-step program, they are great at, once they do it, staying with it, because it's the 11th step, meditation and prayer. So different people, I find sometimes when we bring it to people and they didn't really reach for it, it may take them a while to get in the groove. But people who come here and reach for it, they like it, because it's like a mini vacation.
That's how I sort of see meditation too. It is like a mini vacation.
Yeah.
Like, man, I feel good. Very few things bother me for quite some time after. And almost nothing bothers me the way it used to. Some of that's meditation, and some of it's having the edges sanded off with age and a drop in testosterone.
There you go.
Just my own little theory. I thought I'd throw that out. So how do people contact you guys?
They can email me, Lynn, Lynn, at davidlynchfoundation.org.
Okay. You can contact Lynn and she can set you up with some teaching.
Or if there's somebody here who would like to start a program, they work with a group. That's really what our mission is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to kind of bring it to those vulnerable, underserved populations.
So you've dedicated your entire life to teaching this.
I've worn many different hats. I learned this when I was a teenager, and then I became a TM teacher soon after that. So, I've been a mom raising 3 children. I've been a TV producer for many years. I was a high school teacher, but always with this skill set of how to teach somebody to meditate, to transcend.
What was it like to teach high school with this, having this knowledge, and were you able to disseminate it without saying, "Oh, you kids should meditate"? I don't know if you can do that as a teacher, because that might freak parents out and the school
Well,
boards and that kind of thing.
okay, so where I was a high school teacher, it was a school where all of the staff and students practiced TM. Believe it or not, private school.
Really?
And so I taught high school there. The students had already learned, and it was very fulfilling. I mean, these kids, it was worked into their school schedule. They would meditate twice a day, and they were so bright, so creative, because you're not just releasing stress, you're waking up those creative centers in the brain. These kids were amazing. Just was very, very fulfilling.
Man, that would be because I always, one of the things I always talk about on this podcast is what are the best ways we can teach kids that is just not happening now. I mean, the idea of meditation in school when I was a kid it was unheard of. It just wouldn't have happened.
It was like an experiment. And they thought, I want my kid to have this, it's actually called consciousness-based education. So instead of just pouring a bunch of information into a kid's head, it's also allowing them to wake up their consciousness so that they can relate and understand very deeply that knowledge. My own children went to that school. So, mom was there teaching in high school, but it was great. And then after my kids graduated, I felt very passionately that other parents needed to know about this, and other educators needed to know it existed. And so I became the education director for the TM organization in New England. We told lots of educators about that, and we actually brought this is so fun. We brought this to a inner city high school in Connecticut that had 1,300 kids. And we taught 1,000 high school students in this really rough inner city high school. And the research on it was published. And what they saw was, so this school had a dropout rate of 22%, but for the students who learned TM, only 2% dropped out. To bring that dropout rate down to 2%, and then the graduation rate went up 15 points. Just doing TM twice a day at school.
I believe it.
And when we went in that school, they had metal detectors. The police were coming in every day for fights. And after 3 years, the metal detectors were gone, no more fights. Everything had settled down. It was very, very powerful.
I would love to see somebody at the top of the education department,
right,
bring this kind of stuff to the rest of the country.
Yeah. You can, if you go to our website, that there's a video about that school. It's something like TM in New England high school. But in that high school, there were 5 different gangs represented. And these kids from different gangs would sit in the same room and close their eyes and meditate together.
Man, it sounds unbelievable. It seems like it would do very well in other places like prisons.
We have prison programs. Absolutely. I mean, prisoners have a lot of time on their hands.
It's so obvious and simple once you hear it.
Yeah.
And that's really to be able to break down whatever barriers there are to getting the information out there and having people just open-minded enough to go, well, let's try it. Can't hurt anything. That's for sure.
That's right. There are no negative side effects, only positive side effects with TM. But you're right. There's so much misinformation swirling around meditation, and it's just getting that information out there. And I can only thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, I just love getting information out to people of ways to make your life enhanced in any way possible. And because there's so many people struggling, and stress is probably one of the biggest things. The thing that comes up a lot in this podcast, and trauma. Those are the 2 biggest things, no matter what practitioner I talk to.
A lot of suffering. And guess what? We are not here on this planet to suffer. We really aren't. This is a technique to take that suffering away. We can only heal ourselves. As my dad always said, God helps those who help themselves.
What kind of guy was your dad?
Unbelievable. He was somebody who was, he was here before, I don't know, there weren't many people like him on the planet in his generation. He was very expanded consciousness, very awake, aware person. His family came from Italy, so he was more European, you might say.
Okay.
And he would walk through the house singing in Italian. He was a TV producer, very creative guy. And I was very fortunate to have a dad like that.
I love that he was singing and walking around the house. That is fantastic. Yeah. That was not my experience in my house, so I'm envious of that. That sounds amazingly great.
And because of the prejudice against Italians when his family came, he had no prejudice. So I was so fortunate to be raised without any racism, prejudice, anything, ever.
I just love the whole idea of different generations passing on wonderful things to their children.
Yeah.
And now you're doing the same thing, and you've done it with your own children. How old are your kids now? Do they have kids?
Oh, yeah. I'm a grandma.
Yeah.
So my grandson is a junior at SDSU. My 3 kids all meditate still and really, really appreciate it. So the 2 sons are entrepreneurs. My daughter works at the VA. She's a certified dietitian working at the VA in San Diego.
I love this. This is so great. Thank you so much for talking to me. And people can go to the David Lynch Foundation to find out more about TM.
Yes.
And that's probably the best way to do this and if you have an organization or of something that would be a good fit for this, which is probably anything, is from what contact Lynn or somebody there at the David Lynch Foundation and hook in with these guys and try some TM. That's what I'm going to do.
All right. I'm so excited to teach you.
Thank you.
Your mantra.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Much appreciation for you listening to The Exploding Human. Please go to my website, theexplodinghuman.com. There's a YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, also a Facebook. And if you'd like to donate and support the show, you will have access to extra content. You can do that on the website or go to patreon.com/theexplodinghuman. And I want to thank Lynn Kaplan and all the folks at the David Lynch Foundation for today's episode. Thank you guys for listening in. Have a great day. Bye.